welcome. Oh, now I got hit. Got it here. Okay. Welcome to the Wednesday, January 17th, 2024 meeting of the Landmarks Commission. First thing on the agenda, item A is information on how to attend the Zoom meeting. And I think everybody's got that down, like down pat. So it also contains instructions on how to make a comment and how to get in. So item B, roll call. Stephanie, would you bring us up to date on that again?
Yes, looks like everybody's here except for Brian, who is excused, and Rebecca emailed and said she'd be joining late in person, so I'll just note her time of arrival.
Okay, thank you for that. Has everybody taken a look at the agenda, and do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to tonight's agenda being approved? Is anyone opposed? Is anyone opposed? Seeing that there's no opposition to tonight's agenda being opposed, we will approve it. Approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Does anybody have any comments, or do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, having a motion and a second, all those in favor to approve, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, it's unanimous ayes, take it. Moving on to regular business. E, number 1, certificate of appropriateness, consideration with possible action on a design review for a porch replacement located at 820 South Quincy. This is held over from October, and from the October 18th Landmarks Commission meeting. Jason, take it away.
Sure, I can do that. Looks like Stephanie's put together a lovely PowerPoint presentation that shows you a photograph of the house. You should recognize it, its location, and you may recall at this particular place. Here's where the property owner tore the front porch off, arguably because of some misunderstanding as to what aspects of the initial COA application were approved. The next slide is a bit of a surprise to me because I haven't seen it yet, but here's pictures of the porch before it was removed from the house. Note the pretty columns and the railings. I believe this is the third time we've talked about this project. So the second time around, the property owner demonstrated, I believe to Landmarks Commission satisfaction, that the porch columns were, quote, beyond repair and should be considered for replacements. And I believe Landmarks Commission approved replacement columns as shown here. Now, the new wrinkle this time around is that although the original porch railings, at least on the lower level, are still around, as shown in the picture on the left, the owner proposes to install new porch railings as shown on the right, without providing any detail beyond the picture at right. Now, my assessment of these is that, one, they're not the original railings, which I believe we've kind of been pretty blunt in saying we want to see reused. But two, as replacements go, these railings are of a design that's more appropriate on a rear deck. Specifically, the balusters are to be face nailed into the rail, whereas with the original railings that you see here, the balusters are end connected into the upper and lower rails. But as far as a side-by-side comparison of the design goes and the materials and the appearance, this is a pretty good view of what the property owner is proposing without any additional details. So I'm going to speculate. Yep, recommendation is to, well, I can't read that, Stephanie. I think it says to deny the proposed railings. Yes?
Yes, so you have down here that the caged in appearance does not match the original design.
Yep, so presumably, again, the property owner hasn't provided details, but presumably the proposed replacement balusters and railings will be much taller than those originally present. And I am pretty sure in the past I pointed out to you that the appropriate design for the historic character of the house is one in which the top rail is at the same level as the window sills on the porch, which are going to be, in the low 20 inches above the deck. Code, of course, requires them much taller, which I presume is what's being proposed here. That's not going to give you a good appearance. That's what I'm talking about when I say a caged in appearance. Beyond that, as I mentioned a short while ago, the design of face nailing this new material into the new rails, which none of it looks like it did back in the day. The approach of the design is also just inappropriate for the historic character of the house. Thank you.
And we do have the applicant here if you have any questions for him.
I would like to make a motion to open the floor.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to open the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to opening the floor? Okay, let's open the floor and let the homeowner speak.
You can come up to the podium. The speaker is right under there.
Yeah, is there a specific question for me? I was asked to just provide something that would be usable, and the old ones, if you look at them closely and actually put your hands on them, are old and rotten in spots, so they're reusing them is not an ideal situation.
I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on that. The image of the top of those columns shows very profound rot. Is that what you're saying is throughout all of this hardware, including the rails?
Yeah, the columns are, in my mind, unusable. The railings, there are parts of them that are usable, but you can see some of the upper parts have rotted out. Some of the lower parts are rotted out. The connections where they connected to the old columns may be usable, but I'm not quite sure. They're old. I don't know how much more useful life you're going to get out of them anyway.
Well,
So-
I am impressed by that image of the column showing very substantial rot. So I'm very sympathetic to the idea that what is there cannot be repaired. So I certainly understand that that's almost a done deal, that you can't reuse it. However, I am concerned, I would like to give you a chance to address this, that what is proposed there in the one image is substantially different from what exists.
Mhm.
And the purpose of the ordinance that guides us is to preserve. If it can't be repaired, it needs to be replaced like for like. So I'm definitely sympathetic that you can't repair, but I am concerned you're proposing something that dramatically changes the historic image. So please feel free to respond to that.
Sure. David, I don't know if it's the purview of your organization, but at this point, I'll put up whatever you guys want. Seriously, in all seriousness, I don't want to reuse the old stuff because you're not going to get many more use out of it. And I want to make the house finished and use my front porch. So I'm willing to put in whatever you would recommend. I got the historical part where we can put in the dovetail to make it, to 36 inches and keep it at 24. I'm open to input. I was at Menards and saw this and said, it looks similar. I'm not an architect. I'm not a woodworking expert. It looks similar to my untrained eye. So I took a snapshot and said, I'll put something that looks close to it. And that's where I'm at.
Well, that's very heartening to hear, and I'm really glad that you spoke to that about doing what is appropriate. Part of what we do is try to educate and share an understanding of our directives, which comes from the ordinance as well as the guidelines from the Secretary of the Interior. So what we're really looking for is, if you can't reuse, is to replace absolutely as close as possible. And it sounds like you're very open to that. Fair enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyone other questions for the homeowner?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, it's a question as much as a comment. I would just say you've got a great opportunity here because you've got the existing materials. You know exactly the proportions of the railings, top and bottom rails, and the balusters. The balusters are pretty simple. They're just square material, but the top and bottom railings, any competent woodworking shop can replicate those and match those. So I think you've got a great opportunity. You've got the pattern in front of you. It's just a matter of getting the new materials produced.
Yeah,
I
Paul,
was just comment too that I feel that there are some great options out there. I think you'll be able to find something that is going to look a lot like what you have now. And there are companies in Green Bay where you can check, they've got some pretty good catalogs. You might be surprised what's available. It's something that's gonna look really good.
Okay,
anyone else? I would like to say all three of you made some really good points, and the homeowner, you seem, you know, very perceptive and willing to do the right thing here as far as height and so on. I guess my
I
next
do have
question,
I do have one question for staff. Is this COA limited to these rails?
What do you mean?
Are we only talking about the rails? Because if I remember, there was quite a bit going on, but I just want to make sure that we've resolved everything else, and the only thing we're addressing tonight are those rails. Is that correct?
Jason can maybe expand on this, but this has already been before the commission twice, and in those two settings, once the flooring, the ground level, well, both levels, the decking material was already approved. And then the columns were approved at the last one, so it's just the railing component that's left. But
Well,
it's all part of one COA.
that's not entirely true. We don't know the dimensions of the header above the columns, and we don't know what treatment will be used for the overhead, the ceiling, if you will, the sheathing. So that's still never been addressed.
the homeowner, are you here, and do you have any information on those last two items?
My goal is, plans is to rebuild it like for like,
Okay,
so. It's proving to be a little more difficult.
Unless there are any other comments from the commission, I'd like to make a motion to close the floor, and I'll be following up with a motion.
well, I'll second that motion. Having a motion and a second, all those in favor to close the floor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one's opposed. Let's close the floor.
Given the rather candidness of this applicant, I'm gonna make the motion that this be approved on the condition that the work that is done meets the approval of staff without having to come before us again.
And do we have a second to that motion?
Can I just add, and staff would include Jason?
Yeah, he's still on staff. I'm not making these decisions. Don't worry.
Okay, I was just concerned because I feel the Menards product is not,
Yeah,
Good
I'm a little bit leery of the idea of a motion for approved, but can we say that the resubmittal would be appropriate for staff review and approval?
That's actually exactly what I intended.
So I would say resubmittal is required, but that we would be comfortable with the staff approval thereafter as
Yep, that's exactly what I meant, was that this would run by staff rather than us, so that the applicant can move forward with the work.
yeah, I'd second
And-
that.
I'm sorry, okay, you made the motion. Who made the second?
Rebecca,
Okay, great. Having a motion and a second to leave it up to staff approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed to that process? No, no one's opposed. There is no one opposed. Having a motion and a second, the motion carries. And a unanimous vote. So, thank you, team. That was nicely done. Item number E2, consideration with possible action on a design review for a new shed located at 900 South Jackson Street. Jason,
Here's the map. I bet you the next slide is some image of the house and or shed. And we could probably jump to the chase and say that I recommend you approve the shed. Thank you.
I would make a motion to approve that.
Second that.
having a motion and a second, all those in favor repeat by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed to the shed? Is anyone opposed? No oppositions? Having no oppositions, the motion carries for the shed. Item number E3. Consideration with possible action on a design review for windows, doors, stairs, and roof work at 1222 South Monroe. Jason.
1222 South Monroe. It's the last house in the district as you head south out of Astor. It's come before us a long time ago, or came before me anyway. It's changed hands once or twice since then, but this COA is asking for a lot, and I don't really remember what all I said. So the work currently underway includes stripping off the non-historic siding, a repair and repaint of the historic siding, and a conversion of the house into basically a 2-unit, whereas it was arguably a 1-unit before. Generally, the historic character of the house is proposed to be maintained, but some changes include a few windows on the side. On the image on your right side there near the back, you see the windows are getting shorter on the rear wing near the new stairs up to the upper unit. And then on the far back, we're looking at adding a deck, not only on the ground level, that first story deck, but on the second story, we're taking a gabled roof, flattening that off and making that a landing deck, if you will, to enter into the second story apartment from the outside. Now, we've done similar approvals. If I speak loosely of like Cheryl's house had some big changes on the back. And here we're looking at, big changes, but again, they're on the back. So the pair of windows circled on the left, those will be removed and replaced with something shorter, I think a tripart window. And then up top, picture on the right, that window becomes a means of egress, and I suppose it's a hipped roof down below. That hipped roof gets leveled off and converted into a second story deck. So there's some pretty pictures, awesome work. Oh, I guess, yeah, we're getting a driveway, but it's going to take up the same footprint as the current driveway.
And then they're also doing the railings on the front porch again.
Yep, railings on the front porch, but they're keeping the rail height nice and down low where it belongs, level with the windowsills. And yeah, for me on my tiny phone, I have no idea what that says. I think it's recommending approvals.
Yes. This is fun to do with you on your phone.
Sure it is.
Jason, I
The
do have a
applicant in attendance?
No, no, I don't think so. I don't see him online.
Jason, I've got a question for you on that walkout porch you talked about on the rear. That addition, is that addition historic?
It's historic enough. And by that, I mean, it was there during what the presumed period of significance would be. It's probably the kitchen wing, or if it was an add-on, it's an early add-on to be a summer kitchen wing. But yeah, it's old.
Well, given that, my concern is that removing that roof is actually altering the historic nature of the building. I'd be
That
interested in other thoughts.
That's certainly true, just as it was true with Cheryl's house when we removed the rear roof so as to build a new roof much higher up, and we altered the pitch of that roof and added basically living space where none could have existed before. So here, I'm proposing that you take some liberties, recognizing that it's at the rear of the property. And although it's visible from some public right of way, it's still in keeping with changes that we've made elsewhere in the district.
It's also holding the historic nature of the style. I mean, they're not straying too far from that. I mean,
Stephanie, if you could go back to the last renderings, yeah, that page. I guess to conclude what David and Steve just said, I don't have a problem with that rear porch because of it's on the rear of the building. It's sort of not visible from the street. And that's consistent with previous rulings from this commission. My question is on the replacement of those two windows just to the right of that stairway. Why are those windows not being replaced with the same historic proportion? They look like either single or double hungs that are just to the right of it.
I was going to ask the same question.
They are redoing the interior layout, so that's why the interior layout was included in your packet. I usually wouldn't include that. And that's where the proposed kitchen area would be. So the countertops will be there. So they wanted to shorten the windows to accommodate a kitchen.
No, I see that now.
Anyone else have anything to add or
Well,
ask?
that one actually, now that you're pointing this out, this does concern me because it is changing. And now it's on the side, so it is visible. And we've got, now we really do have a change on the sidewalk view of the historic nature of the house. So I disinclined about this change.
If I could interject, you're absolutely right. However, when I look at the house in its entirety, and I recognize that we've lost the non-historic siding in exchange for the actual historic siding to be restored, it's not like you're giving ground on all fronts. You're gaining ground on another front as well. So I'll leave it at that.
The other question I had is on regards to the front porch. The existing porch doesn't appear to be historic. And so is that where we're going with, there's some sort of pergola type accents on the existing porch roof, and it's coming back as a shed roof instead. I guess, can anybody fill us in as to what's going on there with that change?
The pergola style is not, appropriate for the original style of the house, but the footprint of the porch may be historically appropriate. And correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie, I think the applicant said they were getting rid of the pergola, the clothespin ends or something to make it look more appropriate.
And actually, I find that argument convincing. The pergola really stands out as inconsistent with the fabric of that building, and what's being restored, or rather proposed, if anything, it's closer to a restoration. So actually that one I'm impressed with.
Yeah, I don't say I'm objecting to what's new. I just wanted to make certain that we were in agreement that the existing porch was probably not historic, and therefore that's why we're okay with the change.
I see a thumbs up there from Jason. Anyone else have anything to add?
So I'm inclined to say that this is meeting the muster. I recognize the change of use for the window, raising an eyebrow, but I see an effort at restoring the original front porch, an effort at restoring the original siding. I think it holds in keeping with the style of the architecture. I'm inclined to approve this.
And do we have anybody to second that motion?
Well, Ron, I was avoiding using the official words and making a motion to approve it. I can do that. I'd make a motion to approve this.
Oh, I see, okay. Well, I mean, I would make a motion, excuse me, I would second that motion. I think we got enough information saying that there's gonna be more historical correctness than less. So, and then is present currently, so. Having a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed?
I'm gonna oppose it solely about the windows, but I understand that the weight of the commission would carry it, so I understand.
Okay, anyone else opposed? Is there any other opposition? Having a majority,
Just wanted to add that am still uncomfortable about the windows, but I understand.
and did you vote?
I voted for.
Oh, okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So then it sounds like the motion, having a majority in favor, looks like the motion carries to approve. Okay. Item number E4, consideration with possible action on a design review for window replacement located at 1424 Admiral Court, which is Mason Manor.
Oh,
Yep, that's Mason Manor. It was just added to the National Register of Historic Places last year. I did that. Yay, team. Y'all helped too, but they are doing a tax credit project, and that tax credit project in its entirety has already been reviewed and approved by Wisconsin State Historic Preservation Office, the SHPO. That does not mean that you have to approve it, but it does mean that that I think you should. So that's really the basic nuts and bolts of it. Thank you.
Anyone care to add anything or?
So I'm on the Housing Authority and I was involved in that. I suspect that I need to abstain from it, voting on it on behalf of this commission.
Yeah, I taking the easy way out.
Yeah, she had her hand raised if anyone was interested in opening the floor. I would open the floor.
Jen?
Make a motion to open the floor.
second.
Okay, a motion and a second to open the floor. All those in favor, reply by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the floor is open. Go ahead. Whoever was gonna speak.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi, Jen.
and I work with Heritage Consulting Group, and we are the ones that completed the Part 2 historic tax credit application that went to the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. And I just wanted to let everybody know that the windows that we're replacing are not the original windows. They were replaced, I guess I don't know the exact year. My guess was the 80s. And they were replaced with a smaller window and a different configuration than the original windows. And what we are proposing to put back are windows that actually match the dimensions of the original windows and the operation of the originals. And so we're pretty excited about it because I think it's going to make a great improvement to restore the historic appearance of this building. Thank you.
And I said, thank you for that. Sorry, I was muted. Anyone else?
That's good to know.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, having heard all that, do we have any comments or any motions or?
Make a motion to close the floor.
Just a second.
Motion and a second to close the floor. All those in favor? Aye.
Right.
Anyone opposed to closing the floor? Okay, the floor is closed.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Having a motion and a second to approve, all those in favor reply by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition to the project? Any opposition? Is anyone opposed? Seeing that there's no opposition, the motion carries for approval. Item number E5, consideration with possible action on a design review for replacement windows located at 412-414 Fourlier.
Jason, before you jump into this one, I just want to give an update. This project came before you, I think in October. It was for the architectural restyling to a Tudor. That was appealed to city council, and last night at council, we had come to an agreement with the property owner about the facade pieces of this puzzle. So some of the images show the overall facade, but this application is just for the window replacement. So just to give some background on the rest of the property, since we did just see this property not that long ago.
Stephanie, can you elaborate a little bit more about what happened last night at council?
Sure. So we came to the agreement with the property owner, and the council approved that they would be able to keep the stone facade on the front here. But then they would retain all of the siding and not do any of the stucco and wood in that Tudor style that they were proposing. So they would get to maintain the front stone that's already been done. And then the siding will stay in place and then just be painted.
Was it noted at the council level or in the discussion at all that this work started before permits were in place?
Yes, it's quite the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I attended the meeting prior to last night's when the first time council talked about it, and it was an interesting meeting. And council is aware that the property owner had started the exterior work prior to obtaining our approval and getting any permits.
Jason, if you want to go into the windows.
COA proposes replacing windows. I recognize that we generally are okay with that, and that's fine. The nitpicky stuff that you need to discuss tonight is on other replacement window proposals that have been approved. The Landmarks Commission has generally insisted upon the grill, the muntins, sorry, actually having physical glue-on grid muntins on the exterior of the glass, sandwiched in between the glass and on the interior of the glass. The proposed replacement windows before you tonight are solely, grid between panes or whatever. It's just the little plastic grids sandwiched in between the two layers of glass without the glue-on texture on the front and the back of the glass. That glue-on texture type stuff, the full simulated divided light package, that requirement comes from the State Historic Preservation Office in their guidance / requirements on replacement windows. Beyond that little detail, the proposed stuff doesn't meet the requirements. The proposed glass also has a visual light transmittance value of like 0.5, I think. State requires 0.72, but the state requirement per verbal discussion with the SHPO staff is intended more for commercial settings. They don't really get too wound up on the residential side, but just so you're aware, I probably said something about that in that recommendation that I cannot read. And before I yield my time here, I'm gonna change venues shortly and go out to the car. I don't know if that means I'm gonna lose you, but that's what I have tonight. Thank you.
Do we know that the windows that are currently in the house, I can't believe based on the photos, they're original, or do we know or do we not know?
We're confident that the windows currently in place, the vertically divided 3/1s and 4/1s, that they're old. So they're of the period of significance. And if you recall, this house was defined as a vernacular style house in the National Register nomination. So it's got craftsman windows on a colonial revival thing. It's a mishmash. They're old windows. I can also tell you, doing the research, that the house had a pretty significant fire back in the 40s that gutted the kitchen and other parts. So the windows may be odd replacements. Thank you.
Right now, there's storm windows on this over them, and the new windows would not have storms, I'm guessing, right?
I didn't see any proposed storm windows, but I don't know.
I'm gonna just suggest that based on what we're seeing here, that I would be okay with these windows that are proposed, because it sounds like the property owner is matching the existing style as far as the 3/1. And without really fully understanding, it doesn't appear that that 3/1 is even consistent from one floor to the next. So I don't think we're giving up an awful lot, and by what appears to be a removal of those existing storm windows, I think that's gonna greatly benefit the aesthetic nature of this property when it's done.
Jason, can you, do we have any precedent set on visible light transmittance? I mean,
For houses, I don't know that we've set a
Um,
numeric value. I think we've been pretty permissive. It's on the storefronts in the commercial sectors that we stick to the 0.72 or 4 or whatever it is.
yeah, but I mean, we haven't seen that itemized in a submittal or a COA.
I can't recall us ever really discussing it, Steve,
Yeah, I mean,
for residential properties.
right, I mean, I know how to do it commercially, but there's a pretty significant cost associated with it. I'm not sure it's a real big deal breaker residentially yet. Okay.
I think the problem is I'm guessing that really puts a burden on property owners to find a residential style window.
I don't,
With that
I-
visible light transmittance, I just don't see you getting that, and I think it becomes a financial burden.
right, I mean, the only way you get there is the low iron stuff, and I don't know if you can get any one of the residential manufacturers to actually make you a window with it, I don't know. Or maybe, I just don't do a lot of wood clad windows, so. I'm with Paul.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Question for Jason, you talked about, and I don't quite follow because I just don't have the expertise. The dividers that are in the window, you talked about different styles or different material. How does what is proposed change the sidewalk view perception of the house if the new type of divider went in?
So the State Historic Preservation Office likes to have that three-dimensional texture on the face of the glass because it casts shadows and interacts with the light in a certain way that best mimics the original multi-pane window that has a three-dimensional texture in those muntins. From a practical perspective, when you go to clean the windows, it's a lot easier if they're not there. If there are currently storm windows present and they won't be present, I can't really speculate on how much of a visual nuance difference there's going to be having those muntins physically textured on there or not. Yeah, it's kind of a judgment call. All I can say is that previously we've pretty well stuck to insisting upon their presence. I don't know that there's a lot of bang for the buck here or not.
You've clarified it for me. Thank you.
David, where I'm at with this is it looks like there's inconsistency from different levels and angles of the house as far as the 3/1 pattern on the windows. Some of the windows don't appear to have the three upper sashes, and so that tells me that those sashes may have been replaced at some time. I guess what I'm doing here is I'm justifying that the house at some point has gone through some various stages of remodeling. And so I'm willing to accept the not true divided lights on these sashes. I think that it's a case by case thing, and that if we were dealing with a different property that had all original windows with those original light patterns, I would be making a different determination. But for this particular property, I'm accepting, I think, of what the property owner is proposing for this window replacement.
Any other comments? Any other concerns? Any motions?
Well, based on all that, I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, second.
Having a motion and a second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed to the windows in the project? Anyone opposed? Is there anyone opposed? Seeing that there's no opposition, the motion carries. It is approved. Let's see, where are we? Item F, informational. Stephanie,
We are having a public meeting concerning the final phase, which is phase 7 of our intensive survey update. So we have Rowan from Legacy Architecture and Jason Tisch from SHPO to give a presentation. We've seen this a few times. Well, Steve hasn't, because he's new, but the presentation is just to give information on what the findings are from that phase 7 report. So I will hand it over to you guys.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. It certainly feels like evening. It's quite dark out here at least. Stephanie, may I share my screen?
Yes, do you have permission to do so?
I don't know, maybe. Yes, looks like I do. All right. This will be fairly brief. The 7th phase of the Historic and Intensive and Architectural Survey of Green Bay addressed the southeast side of the city. The purpose of a survey, for those who don't already know, is to identify structures and districts within an architectural integrity and historic significance that are then potentially eligible to be nominated to the National Register of Historic Places. Another purpose of these documents, surveys in general, is just sort of to increase public awareness, to have these be available through libraries or just online through the city, where you can learn about the specific history of a certain neighborhood and perhaps even of a private property. The surveys are conducted beginning with a reconnaissance survey, where we drive around in a car with a laptop, a clipboard, a camera, and go up and down every single street in the particular survey area. That's followed up by research locally and then also at the Wisconsin Historical Society to try to find out more about individual properties and flesh out even information about the other properties that are included that aren't highlighted in the report. Then we consult with SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, on what properties in the district, in the area, might be potentially eligible. In this case, we talked about 30 some, and it was narrowed down to about 7. And then we write the report. For those who don't know as well, the National Register criteria for evaluation is based on 4 possible things. A, properties which are associated with significant historic events. So a building or an object or a site might be eligible for the National Register because of some historic thing that happened there. B, associated with a significant person, describes itself. A property might be associated with a famous person who did something of importance in this particular location. And C, the most common of all, is something which embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. This is otherwise just known as architecture, a property which has integrity and significance for its architecture alone. And D, the last and rarest, is something which yields important historical information. This primarily applies to archaeology, and so far in 7 phases of Green Bay, there's not been a single one identified. This particular intensive survey report is broken down by chapters, the largest being, again, architecture, which just talks about all the various houses and commercial properties in the survey area, but other subjects as well, like agriculture, education for schools, notable people that might be eligible for criteria B, for instance. And overall, in the survey, at the southeast side of the city, we looked at over 14,000 properties. It was actually one of the largest phases in all of Green Bay. However, it's primarily suburban in nature, and much of the area was constructed since 1970, which means that we ended up only identifying 266 properties in all. 40 of those had previously been surveyed, and they had previously been surveyed in the 80s, had lost their integrity. So they were removed from the survey, though the records of them are still kept with the Wisconsin Historical Society. And 6 resources were determined as potentially eligible individually, all of them buildings, for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. And in addition, there was 1 church complex also identified. And I'll just go through those pretty quickly here. A reminder is, as well, as I said, we did look at quite a lot. There was over 30 properties that we shared with SHPO. However, many of them were not included. as being potentially eligible, though many of them probably should be revisited at some future time. Say another survey is done 30 to 40 years from now, and time passes, and many of these properties might be considered more important at that time. Lots of homes. Obviously, it's a suburban part of the city, and lots of commercial buildings. Like noticeably, you'll see Kroll's Tavern there. You know, we talked about that one at great lengths, and even ate there to try to make the case that it was indeed potentially eligible, but in the end, it was not. Among those that are eligible, the first one being the Edmund and Alice Delwich House at 2517 Finger. It's a colonial revival type of, has some sort of progressive elements as well, built in 1918. However, this building is not eligible for its architecture, but rather for Edmund Delwich. He was an agronomist and assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin. He also was the superintendent of all 4 northern branches of the University of Wisconsin agricultural experiment stations in the 19-teens, 20s, 30s. He pioneered various soil erosion prevention methods and developed himself disease-resistant strains of peas, wheat, barley, oats, and soybeans. And later, his family established the Delwich Farms Dairy and Creamery, which sold milk and cream across the Green Bay and Brown County for another 40 years after his retirement in the 1940s. The complex in question, the religious complex, is the St. Philip's Catholic Church School and Rectory. It's along Victoria Street. The church was built in 1939, as was the rectory. School addition was one wing of it was completed in the rear in 49, and another facing the other way was completed in 59. It's a mixture of Gothic revival and colonial revival buildings, some of which are attached to each other. But this would be actually eligible for its history in terms of religion. This building was one of the first expansions of the Catholic diocese outside of the city of Green Bay. At the time, this was Preble. It was just a township. It was not incorporated. And this was probably also the first church that was not directly affiliated with an ethnic group in the area. The ones in Green Bay built before this all were aligned very closely with, say, German or Belgian or Polish groups on either the west or east side of the city. This had no such affiliation, and so it's potentially eligible. And this is the Preble Fire Department and Waterworks, 2 buildings attached by a hyphen. They were originally built in 1941 and considerably altered in 1955. They're 2 Art Deco buildings. As you can see, they've been changed quite a lot, but their architecture stands out, and as well as their history. Preble, as you know, was not part of Green Bay until 1964, and for 50 years developed as a fairly large suburb of Green Bay. And these buildings sort of, well, they were also the city hall of Preble at the time when they were constructed. It's sort of an expression of the township resisting incorporation to Green Bay by developing its own services, in this case, water and a fire department. And getting to post-war properties, this is the Ziegelbauer House, built in 17 Pinehurst Avenue, built in 1959. It has almost for those with architectural history, an almost case study appearance, like it was something developed for a magazine, like Architectural Record. It's contemporary, modern style house. It was the first one in the entire neighborhood. When it was constructed, it was just surrounded by forested hillsides. And I would like to know more about who built this and why, but it does stand out for its architecture. This one might be a little more tricky. I'm still talking to SHPO about whether this is eligible or not, and the reasons don't necessarily have anything to do with its history or its architecture. This is Kohl's Grocery Store, 2151 on Main Street. It was built in 1974, one of the last Kohl's grocery stores constructed in Wisconsin or even in the Midwest, in a contemporary style, obviously. It was part of the East Ridge Shopping Center, a strip mall, basically, that was constructed in the 1970s and one of the first in this part of the city. It was the actual grocery store itself that you see here is quite large, and it was a prototype of one of the larger variants of Kohl's. And all of Kohl's had this glue laminated arch, many of them repeating. And this was one of the largest ones, long span. It was one of two like this constructed in Green Bay at the time. The other one, which was located on the southwest side of the city, has since been demolished. So this is the only one left in the city. It has integrity in and of itself, but the strip mall that it's a part of is now owned by U-Haul. And most of that strip mall has no integrity whatsoever. It's been blocked in with concrete. And the question is whether or not you need the entire strip mall to make this property eligible. Yeah, we're still debating that. And last but not least is the Curl House on Polaris Court. It was built in 1978, so not even 50 years ago, obviously in contemporary style, and was designed by one of Frank Lloyd Wright's associates, one of the last projects that they worked on. And that's it for eligible properties and all. But overall, this is probably the last phase completed in Green Bay. There probably won't be any others because the rest of the city is distinctly suburban or even exurban in nature on both the east and west sides of the city. So yeah, this pretty much wraps up the survey work in Green Bay. If you have any questions or comments, just let me know.
Well, I'll make a comment that it's very nice work. Those are some nice photos you shared with us and some very interesting history.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just jump in and add, my name is Jason Tisch. I'm with the State Historic Preservation Office. I'm the Certified Local Government Coordinator. I don't get to present the fun stuff like Rowan does, but I just am here to affirm that because this was funded by a grant from my office because Green Bay is a certified local government partner and has access to the grant funding for these projects. And as Rowan said, this probably is the last survey phase. These have been, I think Green Bay has gotten, this is the 4th year straight,
Yes.
I think that
That's right.
the city has gotten grant funding to do this. They've surveyed almost the entire city. So we've been really happy to support a survey of the entire city. So.
Well, thank you as well, Jason.
Rowan, did you say that the picture we're looking at right now, this house didn't make it for its architecture?
It did not, no. And the reason is Green Bay actually has quite a lot of fine houses, as you're well aware of in the Astor District.
Yep.
And SHPO, and actually this is the standards everywhere, you have to use comparisons. And so for style, for architecture, you can only judge based on style with things within the same location. So in this case, it's judged against other properties in the city of Green Bay. There are a lot of fine
Colonial
style homes, yeah. And this one didn't make it.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it does have a large addition on the rear as well, which is sort of hidden from this photograph. It's set back from the street a long way. Again, this was once a farmhouse, and the rear no longer resembles that. I think it's actually an Airbnb now, a very nice one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Any other questions or comments? Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Staff level COA applications?
Yes, there were quite a few at the end of the year. Let me just slow down. So at 840 South Jackson, the property was recently bought. They have already secured COAs to redo the jump porch here. That was an inspection order, also with the driveway to redo the driveway. They will be coming before us this coming year for a couple projects on the exterior of this house in an effort to rehabilitate it. So we should be looking forward to that soon. Another driveway application, this was previously gravel, so this was a good one to get into pavement. May be familiar with this house. It's at the corner of Ashland and Dousman. They had a car run into the front of the house quite some time ago. And they finally have gotten around to getting the correct permitting and insurance information to redo the porch. So that was more of like a maintenance level, putting it back where it belongs. So that should be done soon. 414 North Maple was the one that we just recently locally registered. They did some work to the rear of the property, stabilizing the foundation and then stabilizing the masonry that is part of the column works on the front. So not a major project, but a lot of stabilization work for the property, which was sorely in need of. We approved a dumpster enclosure at the Initiative 1 location at the corner of Adams and Walnut. Normally something that would be in the public right of way may come before the Landmarks Commission. However, they don't have an alternative. The dumpster, they needed one. They have to enclose it. There's no other place on the property. So it is located close to the alley here behind this tree. And that was approved at a staff level in December. The property here at 800 Oregon is on a corner lot. So this is the front of the property. This was not touched at all. There was an existing staircase off the rear of the property in the alley. They wanted to replace it, but they didn't want to attach it to the actual structure. So they created some sort of a support structure. No idea how they did it, but it was legal with our building code. So that's for them to figure out, but it did not attach to the structure. It did not touch the structure. So we approved that at a staff level as well. And that's something I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. This is 1002 South Monroe. This is, I think, just kitty corner from Aldo School. Pretty prominent house in the Astor District. They were approved for a COA for a fence that's at the rear of the property that kind of comes off the back of the property here, goes to the property line and then closes back on the other side of the property. It's our first chain link fence in a historic district. Every other fence that we've approved has been chain link. That was something that we had discussed in 2018 when we were creating this code, if that should be something that we allow, don't allow. And it was pretty evident that the neighbors wanted the option to be able to use them if they wanted to, but this is the first application we received. I did get some questions from the neighbors if it was allowed. It seemed like it shouldn't be an Astor, which like maybe I personally tend to agree with, but it's not explicitly stated in our code that it is not allowed, just that other materials would be preferred. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention in case you drive by and you're like, why is there a chain link fence in Astor Park? Because our code doesn't say that they can't. So we are looking to do an update to our code, just something that, to be more in compliant with our CLG status, some other things we wanted to add to the staff level reviews. So maybe something for you all to noodle on. Maybe it won't look as bad. This is pretty contained in the rear of the property. However, the rear is kind of the front because it is a corner lot. So, I don't think it's been installed yet since it's been freezing out, but something to keep an eye out when you're driving in Astor just to see how that looks and if you have any strong feelings about that for the future. And that's it for COAs.
Thank you, Stephanie. Staff update.
I already told you guys about the appeal. I think that's it. Jason, are you still there? I don't think that we have anything else.
I am still here, but not really.
So that's it for the staff update.
All right. Date of the next meeting is Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. I'd first like to thank everybody. Great input tonight. Really, really nice meeting. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry, this is Ace. I
Hi,
jumped
Ace.
on the meeting. Hey, how's it going, buddy? I jumped on the meeting a little bit late. I had the 900 South Jackson shed approval. I don't know if I missed that or not. I just wanted to see the update on that before you guys jump off.
Yes, that was approved. I tried to send
Oh,
you.
that was approved. Oh, awesome. Awesome. I was driving, so awesome. Well, thank you very much. We'll make it pretty for you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. We had a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we'll see y'all later. See you at the next meeting.
I would like to